Hello and welcome to Eurweb's Business Review. I'm Steffanie Rivers. Now, before last week, Southwest Airlines had built a reputation of a low-cost air carrier with friendly flight attendants and great customer service. But it only takes one catastrophic occurrence for that reputation to be shattered. And it happened last week. Extreme weather conditions across the country caused Southwest Airlines to have a transportation meltdown during the last week of the year, the busiest week, and potentially one of the most lucrative quarters in the airline industry. Now they've got a branding problem. What can they do to get through this debacle? Mario Natarelli is managing partner at branding company MBLM. He's here to discuss the company's next steps. We want to invite him in. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Terrific. Thanks for having me, Stephanie.
Well, we want to just get your expert opinion on this. If Southwest hired you to lead them out of this marketing nightmare, what core things do you think that you would advise them to do?
And I will echo your sentiments. This was a $1 billion mistake, right? And I think the messages and communications that they've initiated are all spot on. Start with an apology. Maybe it wasn't as emphatic as it should have been. So I maybe would amplify that a little bit more, and then talk about how you're going to modernize both back office and front office and every other technical system to ensure this doesn't happen again, and then get on to the business of proving it. So the signals are there. Now it's about making it happen.
And as you mentioned, they offered an apology, but sometimes it needs to be more than that. So they have come forth and they admitted their scheduling software failed to keep up with the demands of flight misconnections and getting flight crews in place to connect those dots. So the company was forced to cancel 16,000 flights. That's what the numbers say in 1 week, and potentially lost $1 billion in revenue. In previous interviews, you said people make decisions based on emotions. Before last week, that emotional bank for Southwest was full of happy feelings, but now not so much. Southwest Airlines is 50 years old, and most people would say they should have anticipated the software issue. But my question is, apparently Southwest didn't consider the back office readiness that would damage their brand, because they thought, well, this is just behind the scenes. Nobody's going to see that. So my question is, what percentage of time should businesses spend on back office issues that companies their patrons never will see, but are just as important as like happy commercials?
Yeah, most operations, in my experience, especially of the scale of Southwest, spend a very small fraction on marketing and specifically on investing in their brand. It sounds counterproductive or counterintuitive, but most of the operational budgets of these airlines go to the things that were supposed to work on this day that you mentioned, or this week where the system failures occurred. So I think one of the interesting aspects of this is that this will be a business case study for a generation, right, of what not to do. Many companies have, business continuity planning and things in place to prevent, system failures of this scale. But this proves that even with the best planning, you can't imagine the unimaginable. And maybe this would have been even worse, considering they probably had some of those business continuity plans in place. So, marketing at the end of the day is about making good on the promises that you make. Your business puts forward a promise, your performance delivers on that promise. When you don't, you create distrust, as you said, you erode the emotional bonds that you've built with your customers, and it takes a ton of time and energy to build that back. Reports say they've lost $1 billion. It's probably 100 times that number when you think about the equity that they've lost with their customers. So it's going to take a long time with a lot of effort and a lot of investment to win that all back.
So I'm one of those people, and you might be the same. I hate to waste time. I hate to waste money. But if you are the company that makes me waste both, I spent hours in the airport and I didn't get where I'm going and I haven't gotten a refund. What can they do to build that trust? You know, they said we're also going to, in addition to your refund, we're also going to give you 25,000 bonus points, which equals about $300, I'm told. Is that enough to build that trust back?
I mean, if I was one of the ones affected on December 24th, I would say the answer is no. And they'll learn that and discover that if it isn't enough, they're going to have to double down or do other things to win people back. This is going to take a lot of time and energy. Remember, first of all, they've got to modernize whatever systems broke on them. You know, this is an airline that has been built around the customer as a concept, but in reality is a utility. It's optimized to be the most cost-effective, streamlined experience. So there are no frills. That means there's really kind of very little pampering and very little that they can do to embrace the customer in a way that will feel like the apology that we hope and deserve for, right? So they have their work cut out for them. It's going to take them a lot of time, and they really need to swarm on any and all ideas, whether it's incentives, whether it's doubling down on their loyal customers, influencers, and other things. They've really got to go at it across the board and do it for an extended period of time while making sure that the performance is there. And I'm sure they're still even trying to figure out what went wrong. So there's some learning that they're probably still doing.
So this is a David and versus Goliath question. Many of our viewers and readers are small business owners. So Southwest Airlines might not be
Right.
able to pivot and recover as fast as smaller companies would. So
Right.
what can smaller companies what can smaller company owners do to learn from this mistake and to prevent it from happening to them on their scale of business?
Well, as you said at the beginning, we believe customers make decisions based on emotion. We know behavioral scientists have proved that. Many brands don't take full advantage of how we emotionally connect with our stakeholders, employees and customers and other important audiences. So I think job one is making sure you're nurturing those bonds. I think if you're thinking about this case study from the perspective of business continuity, every business of almost any scale has to have some kind of business continuity in place. And this proves that even with those plans, things can go catastrophically wrong in ways that you can't ever imagine. And so how do you ready yourself for that? Job one, right? Job two is if and hopefully that doesn't happen, how do you repair and or manage the emotional bonds that you've created? That is ultimately what the brand is based on, right? And by the way, Southwest was suffering in that way before this catastrophe. So while it may be loved by some, it isn't loved by many. And most of that has to do with the fact that it is a kind of low cost commodity airline that people can live without, to be honest with you. So they've got to fix that. And if you're running a small business, that should be your sort of primary concern from a marketing perspective. Can people live without us? And if they can, that's a problem. How do I fix that?
So most business owners know, you need to build a team. You need at least one accountant, depending on how big the company is, at least one attorney, depending on, do you need one or a department? Why is having a branding expert, someone like yourself and your company, important for small businesses, or is that something that you grow into as well?
I think in terms of a branding consultant, that's probably something you grow into. But the owners are the brand guardians, if you will. They're the people that are going to shepherd the vision and ultimately deliver on the promise of what the business is. So that is the brand responsibility of the owners or the head of marketing and sales and customer experience and product, et cetera. So everyone shares in that to some extent, even in small companies. And the owner ultimately has to wear the hat of the chief brand ambassador or custodian. It has to be their job to care about the brand, like the biggest asset the business owns. Think of it like a physical asset, right? It's either gaining in equity or it's diluting in equity. And your job is to make it continually gain and grow and build stronger over time. And that takes investment, it takes energy and attention.
So recently, MBLM conducted a brand intimacy study that revealed travel ranks last out of all industries analyzed. Why is that, and what can industry leaders do to increase its brand intimacy with customers?
Yeah, great question. And it has, in the 12 years that we've been doing the study, airlines have historically always been at the bottom of our list of performance, which is a really kind of sad sort of statement. If you imagine the kind of luster and the wanderlust of flying and the incredible power of travel and how it can be a life affirming and changing experience, it's really hell for most of us in reality. And so airlines have to work really hard to reverse that. Now they have a lot of things working against them, whether it's safety, the logistics challenges, the airports themselves that they don't control, that whole airport experience. So this is by far one of the most complex things for businesses to overcome. And also when you think about performing on price and stripping out all frills and making planes uncomfortable in terms of seating capacity, et cetera, there's so many forces working against the customer that they really are going to have a big challenge in regaining that emotional connection. Southwest, as an example, has zero what we call fusing customers. Those are customers that are inextricably linked with the brand. And great brands have a large proportion of their stakeholders that are fused with the brand, meaning they cannot live without it. And so when you distill the challenge down to that, it's massive. It's going to take time and energy for airlines to work around this kind of low-cost, streamlined approach that has made flying the kind of misery it has become.
And you know what? Full disclosure, I am a flight attendant for another airline, and what you said is true. So this is, my passion is journalism and writing. But what you're saying is true, that by the time they actually get to the seat on the airplane, they've already experienced so many challenges
So health,
getting there,
it's a health,
and
right.
so yeah, but it's only so much that we as a flight crew or a company can do to change their minds by the time they get there. Sure, we do our part, but there's a lot more to it that makes them want to have options in their travel experience.
And when you think of airlines that are trying to make the experience different, like JetBlue or even Southwest to some extent had attempted, has a point of view on this, right? And Virgin and others, they do that at the cost of profit. They do that at the cost of other things, and those business models maybe aren't proving themselves out. So no one really has this figured out. It's going to be a tough climb for them. They are dramatically behind other industries, so this isn't even close. And there's a lot of work to do for them.
Well, Mr. Natarelli, we appreciate you joining us. You're the managing partner at MBLM, the Brand Intimacy Agency, and we will certainly keep you in our Rolodex in case we can invite you back to explain some more things that are going on in this industry and maybe another.
That would be terrific. Great talking to you, Steffanie. Thank you so much.
All righty, have a good
Be
one.
well.
And we thank you too for joining us as well. You've been watching the Eurweb Business Review. To find out more about EUR, you can go to eurweb.com.